What is a variable? We use a variable to hold information, and that information can change, hence it's variable. Let's take a look into our code. So a variable, we declare a variable, var a, and what that does is it tells the computer or the program that we have decided to use a special, like this letter or the word. It might be, how about, all I can think of is altitude. Altitude. We might be storing the altitude of something. It would be easier to store a height, H-E-I-T, I guess. The height of something. So we're telling the computer that we're going to be using the word height later on. Please recognize this. That's declaring it. We're declaring we want to use a variable called height. Now, often we both declare it and put something in it at the same time. So we could say height equals 300, like so. Okay, so here we are assigning the number 300. That's an object. We're assigning it with the assignment operator to the identifier height, and that's our variable. So now height equals 300, and if we were to zog height, like so, that would tell us 300. Oops, 300. But that might change. At some other point, the height might change. H-E-I-G-H-T is equal to, now it's 200. It's getting smaller. So now the height would say 200. So we're never quite sure. With a variable, it might change value depending on what's happening in the program, and that's why it's called a variable. Right? We use a variable anytime we want to remember some information. For instance, down here, here's a variable icon, and we put a container in that. And then later we use that. We say icon.center on the stage. We're using the variable name, the reference of it, to do something to it. Put it on the stage or add something else to it or change its width, etc. So if we didn't have this stored in a variable and we just said newsim container, that would just happen and then we would have no reference to it after. We wouldn't know how to access that. We've forgotten it. Okay. So we use, oh, I don't want to leave it like that. We use a variable to remember things, and what we put in the variable might end up changing. In JavaScript, it's okay if that changes from a number to a string. Often a variable usually holds the same data type, and in some languages that's a requirement. We specify what type of data will be in the variable. But in JavaScript, we can change that type if we want. Usually it stays the same type of thing. 100. Anything else about a variable? So we could do this in 2 steps. As mentioned before, we could just say var height and declare it, and then later, from then on, we don't have to say var. As a matter of fact, we're not supposed to declare the same variable name twice. Now, if we didn't use the var at all, like that, well, we didn't use that, and then we put 100 into height, it would look for a variable called height already in existence. There's a thing called scope. If it can't find it in the current scope here, it would look back into a parent scope and back and back and back. And finally, in the global scope, it would say, oh, there's still no variable height. Therefore, I will just make a variable height in the global scope. But what that would mean is any code that is running elsewhere, any other JavaScript, you might have other libraries going or other programs running at the same time. If everybody let their variables go to the global scope, and we'll deal with scope in a what is coming up, but if everybody let their variables go to the global scope, they might get all mixed up. My height might mix up with somebody else's height, etc. So we always want to declare our variables. Var height. Woohoo! And that's what a variable is. We store stuff in it. It's like, putting a label on Tupperware. Here's, you got some Tupperware and you just put a label on it called height. That's what's in there. Well, in Tupperware you would have yummy things like, oh, broccoli. Ciao. I'm inventor Dan Zen at zimjs.com.